let's begin with that defensive win against Texas A&M. And it's brought to you by our friends at Andy Mason Real Estate. I'll tell you more about them. So it was a defensive win. And here are my thoughts. As frustrated as some of you might be about Joe Milton and his lack of progression into this season, you should be every bit as excited about what this Tennessee defense is able to do. Physically, athletically, skill-wise, I don't know if the defensive backs are all that much better, but they're better because they don't have to defend wide receivers for 4 and 5 seconds. They have to defend receivers for 2 and 3 seconds. And Caleb, that is a monster difference. And it's because of that front seven.
Yes, and the front seven, I don't want to shortchange the front seven last year. Byron Young was a very good pass rusher, but the front seven, as we've talked about, was thin last year. You know, if Jeremy Banks was out or if Byron Young wasn't playing well, you just weren't going to get the type of push that you get this year. But you're right, they can rotate in so many guys now that they're constantly applying that pressure. They're just not applying it at certain times, which you're right, makes the defensive backs look a lot better. And I think that's a really big part of this game, because I think the story of the year so far has been the dramatic improvement of Tennessee's secondary. And I think a big part of that, as you've talked about, is the secondary only has to guard for 3 seconds, not 5 seconds. And look, everybody on the message board who was coming at him, everybody, myself included, owes Kamal Hadden an apology, because he's showing what he can do when he has just a little bit more time, when he doesn't have to guard somebody for 5 seconds, put it that way.
Listen, 4 defensive backs that are Deion Sanders can't guard receivers for 5 seconds. It's just impossible. That's part of football. And a lot of people are already, including David Michael, saying it's time to replace Joe Milton. He should pass the torch. He's not gonna pass the torch. Nobody's gonna give up their starting job. But if there is any thought as to play Nico instead of Joe Milton, I think that was put to rest on Saturday because the defense played so well. And right now, Joe Milton can play incredibly average, Caleb, and still be this can still be a very good football team. A couple of other comments from David Michael that are pretty strong on the message board. I told Dave a few weeks ago concerning Milton and calls for Nico. Let's wait and get Cooper back and make that call. Well, Cooper is back. It's time for Milton to be a real leader and pass the torch. That's not going to happen. Nobody's going to say I'm giving up my starting job. David also saying, love Joe, but it's time to go to be a leader and do the right thing. Now, here's a couple of things. We don't know that Nico is ready to play. I think he is, based off what I've been told. He's been getting 50% of the first team snaps, and he would be ready to go. But I'm going to still harp that this coaching staff wants Joe Milton to succeed. There's not going to make a change. And if this defense wasn't as good as it was, perhaps we'd be having that real conversation. Because if they're not as good as they were, then Tennessee doesn't beat Texas A&M on Saturday, and suddenly you're staring at 2 losses. But right now, Caleb, as much as I think Nico should have been playing meaningful snaps earlier, you have got to kind of run this thing out and see where you are. Because if you put Nico in there at any point, he may not be good. There is a realistic possibility of that. And with this defense, you're at least in the mix. All of Tennessee's goals are still out there. So I don't understand why you would do it now.
Yeah, you're not going to make the switch now. I mean, if anything, you're not going to make it because whatever gain you might make, I mean, Dave, you are going to split the team if you make that decision. And I just don't know if that's worth it. Now, I talked about this on Saturday. Tennessee in 1989 did make a switch when Sterling Hinton got them to 5-0 with some pretty good wins. One at UCLA that year, and another one at Auburn at home. I think you probably remember that game, Dave, when Reggie Cobb just dominated and Auburn was a top 5 team. But I think that was kind of a different scenario, different situation, and they knew they had to be more of a passing team because Reggie Cobb got dismissed. It's not the same right now. They don't really have to change their offense because any player was kicked off the team or got hurt for the year. and they can still be a run. Or put it this way, if Jalen Wright gets hurt, for instance, Dave, we might be having a different conversation about Joe Milton versus Nico, because if Jalen Wright gets hurt, then you got to start putting the ball in the quarterback's hands a lot more. But you don't have to do that right now.
No, and with all goals on the table, listen, as much as we know about Nico, we don't know much of anything. I'm sorry, as much as we know about Joe, we don't know anything really about Nico. And he could go out there and spit the bit. It's happened before. I've seen great players go out there and just not be good. So are you going to take, at this point, you painted yourself into a corner because you don't know what you have, which is why I said that he should have played earlier, particularly against in that UTSA game. He should have played some meaningful snaps early. But you have everything on the table now, and Joe's sitting at the head of the table. Are you going to tell him to get up and put somebody else at the head of the table? He's been the chef to this point. I don't see how you could make any sort of change. Now, if Tennessee loses to Alabama and suddenly you can't win an SEC East, you can't win an SEC championship, you probably aren't going to make the college football playoff, then yeah, I think we're having a different argument a week from today. But as of right now, Tennessee, and we'll get to that, is 10-point underdogs, 9.5 actually, to Alabama. And there's reason to think that they could go to Tuscaloosa and win. Probably wouldn't pick it. Vegas doesn't think so. But until you find that out, I don't see how you can make a change, Caleb.
Yeah, I don't either. And even if Tennessee loses close at Alabama this week, and I still don't think they're going to make a change. I think they still, and I said this in January, I said this in August, and I'm saying this now. I think Tennessee saw, at worst, this year was a transition year where Joe Milton's not a great quarterback, but they can get to maybe a 9-3 record with him, 10-3. And Dave, as a program as a whole, think about this for a minute. You lose a great quarterback in Hendon Hooker. You lose two great receivers in Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt. You have a major drop-off in talent in everything that Josh Heupel needs to make a system run. And in kind of a year where you have that drop-off, you still go 9-3 or 10-3 or something like that. That's a really good sign for the state of the program long-term, isn't it?
I think the trend is better for Tennessee's program right now than it would be if Joe Milton was just balling out and the defense was horrible. Now, I think the trend now is that this program is getting better in places they needed to get better. And I think if you're a Tennessee fan right now, and you've got to be looking at this thing saying, hey, the defense is getting better. You know you're eventually going to get great quarterback play with Josh Heupel as the head coach. Travis points out that Tennessee is 5-1, which is absolutely right. I'm curious who is on that avatar. It looks like Johnny Knoxville playing guitar, Travis. But anyway, I think that this Tennessee football team has to continue down this route. I would have argued something different at times with Joe Milton. He is what he is. Smoky Mountain Red says after Joe's knee tweak, Nico should have played the game out. That's the UTSA game. I totally agree. I thought you had the backdrop for doing that. You go out there in the second half and you say he tweaked his knee. It's UTSA. The game was in hand. So go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. The like button actually feeds me vitamin C since I'm playing hurt a little bit and under the weather. You click that like button and I get over my cold that much quicker. So go ahead and hit it. We appreciate it.
Jamarcus Russell has something to help you get over it.
What's that?
I said Jamarcus Russell has something to help you get over it.
The scissor, yeah, I might go to the scissor. You just have to put a 24-hour limit on it. You can't do it past that because that's when you like it a little too much. Trevor says, "Here's the problem I have with the whole "don't sit Joe, you lose again" argument. I really feel like this team is a good quarterback play away from being good this year and next year. So many people exit. Listen, I'm with you, but again, Nico could spit the bit,
and that's also not." Sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's also not fully true. Look, yes, Joe's a major drop-off at quarterback, but guys, we have to say the jury's in. There's a major drop-off at receiver this year too. This is not the same receiver unit that was there last year. And if you're watching the NFL at all, Jalen Hyatt, every time he's in the game, he makes plays, and the Giants are just too stupid to realize they should use him a heck of a lot more than they are using him. And, I mean, there's a massive drop-off at receiver. There's no question.
No, we thought Jalen Hyatt was running around free because of the offense and the approach and the way they built this team when they had the ball, right? That's what we thought.
Yeah,
we thought exactly that Cedric Tillman was going to pull over coverage, and then Brew McCoy would pull over coverage, and that's why Jalen Hyatt was so open. Let me give you a little insight. Jalen Hyatt was just really damn good, and he was really damn fast. So that's something you have to remember. We shortchanged. I don't know how he did it. He won the Blitnikoff Award, but I feel like, Caleb, you did, I did, everybody did, just kind of thought he was running open because he was running open. And that's not the case. He was getting open.
Yeah, he was getting open. We all owe him an apology. I said Cedric Tillman was a better draft prospect than Hyatt, and I still think Tillman could be good in the NFL, but I think Hyatt's going to be better long term. Again, if the Giants had any brains on their staff, they would use him more. But that's a pathetically run franchise. If anybody watched that game last night, some of the worst coaching of all time.
I did not, because I was on the scissor. Nimrod showing promise. Excuse me. Nimrod showing promise. I really like that guy. I haven't seen enough from him until Saturday. His athleticism, the way he moves around, I'm pretty good at that, I think. And I was really impressed with Nimrod more than I thought I would be. And I'm jealous of his last name because it is definitely cooler than Hooker. There's no question about it.